Everything that I've done is a choice, and it's led me to something, different. Doesn't mean better, but something new, something different. You don't have to do any of this. You get to. This is all a choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes being there for your family means not being there with your family.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Success in South Florida podcast. I'm your host, Adam Rossen. And on today's episode, we have with us Hakim Lakhdar. Hakim, thank you so much for being here. I let our guests do their own intro just because I'll never be able to do it justice. And I don't like doing the whole, reading from some bio. So tell us who you are, what you do, and why you're successful, and what kind of nuggets you have to share for us today.
All right. Well, I like the assumption that I'm successful because I think I am, and by a variety of measures. So my name is Hakim Lakhdar. I'm a transformational leadership coach with Lakhdar Coaching. It's my own practice. My background is executive education, so leadership and management training for lawyers. And I define success. I like that there's an assumption of success because I define success as, we were talking just even prior to the podcast, family, friends. Wealth for me isn't just where my bank balance is. We're fortunate to be in a position where the business is successful, but that success affords me time and space to enjoy the things in my life that I really enjoy, which is working with clients to help them elevate their leadership, but also being a father and a husband and a son and a brother. So yeah, by all measures, I feel very successful, and thanks.
Right. And we talk a lot on the show about money is only one measure of success. And I look at money as it's an amplifier. It's just going to amplify who you are.
Yeah.
If you are a good person and want to continue to do good for the community, well, the more money you have, the more good you're going to be able to do, the more help. If you're selfish, if you're mean, if you're, going to step on people so that way you can jump to the top, well, then money is just going to help you do that, more and more of that. Yeah. So money is an amplifier. Of course, it can be one measure because money is numerical and it kind of helps in some ways. To just be a numerical measurement, but by no means is money, really any, I think, true measure of success. But really cool. So we're going to dive deep into all this stuff, but what's your relation to South Florida? Were you born here? Did you move here?
So spent the early years of my life in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, and around my school age years, probably first grade or so, moved back to the States. And I was born outside of Boston, and my parents said, we don't want to go back to the cold. We want to go someplace warm. And we had a bunch of family down here. So I moved down around the age of kindergarten, first grade, and I've been here ever since. So I lived here all my school age years. And then I left for a number of years, almost 2 decades, to work professionally, both, nationally and internationally. But, I'm a South Florida guy.
Nice. And, okay, where'd you go to high school?
I went to Western High School in Davie, Florida.
And was that before West Broward was a thing?
It was. Yeah. So when we moved into Davie, which is what I put on my address these days, it was unincorporated Fort Lauderdale. Right. So it wasn't even Davie. It wasn't Southwest Ranches. It wasn't Sunshine Ranches. It was really this very far removed western area of the sort of Broward community, Fort Lauderdale area. We had cow pastures. 75 wasn't even built at the time.
Lots of horses.
Right? Lots of horses. Still lots of horses.
Right.
But a really interesting part of Broward, because of how it's maintained that sort of country feel, we're really close to the Everglades. So, that was my backyard, and that's where we went and played, and we would go fish and boat and all that stuff. So yeah, this was way before ever anything west of 75 was built up.
Did you ever go line dancing at Roundup on a Wednesday?
Sure. We won't talk about Roundup next, but yeah, right. For sure been there.
I remember
many a time.
Always. Yeah, you're right. Let's not go there. But okay, and so you grow up down here, right? But already at a young age, you've been a few different places: Boston, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. Come here. What do your parents do for a living?
Yeah. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She had an advanced degree. She had a master's degree in teaching, and she did substitute teaching. She did some teaching. She actually taught etiquette classes when I was younger, and I was her like star student, and I would, recruit my classmates into classes, and she did that for a number of years.
So you can tell us more than just bread drink.
That's right. I can tell you where the forks are. I can tell you where they should go, what they should be used for, the order that they're
So when there's 4 forks at the dinner table, you know what each fork is.
Right. I mean, you can just push them away to the side and use one, or you can use them as they're intended.
Okay.
And my dad was a professor. He was a professor at Nova for 27 years. He worked at St. Thomas, but spent the majority of his career at Nova Southeastern University as a professor of special education. And he did that for 44 years.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. And so is that for the undergrad, or is that for maybe the master's degree program?
He was a graduate professor. So he taught teachers who taught special ed. He was world renowned. I'll give him the credit for having developed curriculum for special education. So he would do that and work with the governments of the Bahamas and Jamaica to develop curriculum for special needs students. And that's actually what took us to the Middle East. Aramco Oil at the time, this is how progressive they were. They noticed that their employees who had dependents with special needs weren't being serviced in the way that they could be. And Aramco said, we want to provide a curriculum for your dependents with special needs so that they can get an education and they can feel supported and included. And my father was, at the time, he had just graduated from Boston University. He spoke Arabic and French. He's a PhD in special education. They said, you're one of one. Let's get you out here and do that. So we spent 5-6 years in the Middle East, and he was developing the curriculum for them, as he worked for them.
That's very progressive.
Yeah, very.
So you had both your parents, their backgrounds education.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, what was it like growing up with two parents that are very intelligent, high advanced degrees, especially, and it's not just like a law degree or an engineering degree. It's, they're advanced degrees as educators.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, there are two parts to that. One, we obviously valued education very strongly in our home. So, I was definitely I'm the oldest. I have a younger brother who's 4 years younger than me. And I'm also first generation. So my father's from Morocco. So there's the added pressure of, you've got a professor father and an immigrant father, and, you bring home all A's and an A minus, and all of a sudden it's like, what's up with the A minus? Right. So there was a lot of emphasis on really putting in the work and taking our studies seriously, and that being an entree into, greater learning and lifelong learning, and then success that you can parlay from your education and your degrees. So, it's always very present.
And did they focus mostly on the book smarts, or was there an element of the street smarts? Because I know for a lot of immigrant families, there's such a huge focus on education, but also the immigrant mentality is you got to street smart, you got to hustle, you got to work, discipline and having that blue collar work ethic.
Yeah. I think my dad is a true academic. He absolutely loved what he did as a professor. I talk about, when we hear that expression, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. He was that guy. He never took a day off because he never felt like he was working. He loved what he did. And because of that, he was a professor in all senses of the word. So if, we're being real here, my younger years were challenging because I didn't feel like I had like a friend of a father. I had very much like a father who was a professor all the time and was never turned off. Okay. And that had me see the value in the academics, but I also was really hungry for, I think this is just sort of my nature, but also because of that, really hungry for social interactions and relationship building. And I have friends that I've been friends with since third grade, second grade, who were groomsmen at my wedding. They were at the house last weekend for a barbecue. These are guys that are family. They're brothers to me. And we developed that relationship because as loving as my parents were, and they're amazing people and they're alive and well, and they're still with me, and I still see them all the time. I wanted that street smarts piece, that understanding of myself outside of the home, to come from the friends I created.
And I mean, that's really intuitive on your part. Is that something that as you're older now, looking back, you realize, oh, that's why I behaved that way, and that's why I gravitated towards that? Or in those moments, maybe in your teenage years, were you actually consciously aware, or do you think it was more that subconscious?
I'm a highly aware, highly receptive, highly sensitive person. So those relationships were always like very important to me because from a very young age, felt the moments in the home when I wasn't getting that. And again, this isn't to say that my parents didn't love me or that they didn't hug me and kiss me and support me. They did that, continue to do that. But there was more that I was looking for that was like, would challenge me from a social aspect to, I mean, my name's Hakim Lakhdar. I'm living in Davie, Florida. You know, it's the 80s. I'm trying to find my place as a young kid. I am different in a lot of ways because of how sensitive and emotional I was even as a young kid. And I wanted to figure out how to navigate that, and navigating that in the home with the dynamics that exist there within a family was different than figuring out how I would be received by others outside of the home. So I think that it's always been a very conscious thing for me. And I get the question a lot, like, you know, so how long have you been coaching? And I kind of half jokingly say, I've been coaching since I was 7. You know, I was the guy that friends got picked last for kickball and we'd go walk and talk about it on the fence line. You know, instead of me playing in the game, I'd go walk with them and we'd sort of look at it. And that for me was a way for me to learn about them. And it was also a way for me to learn about myself in the process.
So the blend of the high IQ and the high EQ. And I definitely want to come back to this because I'm seeing so many things in this that is probably a big part of your secret sauce.
Yeah.
As, you know, as a successful coach and everything that you do. But let's just continue on a little bit with the superhero origin story.
Yeah.
So, all right, you grew up in South Florida. You know, where do you go to college and how do you decide to get into coaching? Is it just go to college and I'm going to be a coach, or do you go in through maybe, you know, corporate America and figure out your way, right? So let's kind of move on to those next steps.
So I'll go back just a little bit because even as you were mentioning, you know, how did I figure this out in my teenage years? It was even prior to that. So I went into middle school at Walter C. Young Middle School, and there was a program there called peer counseling, and peer counselors would be trained and educated in ways in which they could counsel and guide and support their peers within the middle school. And it was through, you know, divorces and abuse at home and parents separating and struggles in school. And we were being advised to support those students on a peer-to-peer level. And we also used to do conflict mediation. So I'd be at the lunchroom and then we'd all go out and play tetherball in the field. And there'd be a fight that would break out and we'd all be on the outer ring watching the fight. And then 20 minutes later, I'd be in a room with those two people, helping them mediate what happened and actually sign a contract saying that they understand why that happened and why it won't happen again. And when I think back to that, I'm like, who the heck was I to be doing that? I was one of the only boys in the class. I had a black satin jacket that I wore proudly. How my buddies didn't pick on me or like give me crap for that. I don't know, but it was always just so clear that that's who I was and that's what I valued. And I gravitated to those opportunities. So fast forward into high school, we had a JROTC program there, and I signed up for JROTC. I had no aspirations of going into the military. A lot of my friends did, and you know, I love them for their service. I had no aspirations of going into the military, but it was another avenue for me to learn about leadership. And I'm getting chill just thinking about it. I spent 4 years dressing up, shining my belt buckle, shining my shoes every Wednesday, putting my JROTC uniform on and doing drill and ceremony and flipping rifles because I was just sort of curious about how that might challenge me. And I moved up through the ranks and then I'd get demoted and then I get moved up through the ranks and then I get demoted. And it was just such an amazing 4 years of learning how to navigate an area of leadership I was unfamiliar with.
And so when kids that age, right, we're talking 6th, 7th, 8th grade, now 9th grade, 10th grade, when they're focused on video games or sports or this, because I grew up, you know, mine was more sports and I learned a lot of leadership and I'm still learning tons and I'm still screwing things up every day, right? Like most of the lawyers that you coach and deal with. But when you're talking sports, it's a lot of times it's high pressure, it's high conflict, high emotions, boom, 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 especially when you're playing high level competitive sports. I'm not talking just, you know, rec league at, you know, at the J or the Y. Right. But these are different things. You know, you're learning real, I don't want to say real leadership, but a different style of leadership and conflict resolution rather than just, all right, two kids on the basketball team. We'll leave you guys alone and you guys fight it out for a bit. And then when you're, all huffing and puffing, and you guys just realize, all right, we got our aggression out. Just hug it out now. Right. You're doing real conflict resolution.
Yeah.
That's incredible at those ages. And your thirst and desire for that at such a young age is I don't know. I've never seen that before.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think for me, the term that I use often in my coaching, which is the way I would sum up what you just described, it was my hunger. I didn't know at the time. I know now. It was self-leadership.
Okay.
It was leading myself. How could I learn more about myself? How could I get clear on who I was as an individual so that I could effectively lead myself first and then ultimately lead others, whether it was a family, whether it was a group of friends, whether it was a team, whether it was a business. And that was just something that was very appealing to me, to understand my place in the world and how I would relate to people and how my energy would impact those around me. And I couldn't do that without understanding myself first. And those were opportunities for that.
And so we're talking 15, 16 years old now. I know for me at that age, it was, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, doctor or lawyer. That was it. Those were my only two choices. But those are also things that I do think I did like and want to do. What was that like in your household with your academic parents, but also knowing you as the type of child, young adult, teenager that you were?
Yeah. So I was always a talker. If anybody watched Leave It to Beaver, and this is like very much dating.
It's a little to me, but I get it. I know.
But there's a guy in there called Eddie Haskell. One of my buddy's parents used to say, like, you're like Eddie Haskell, which was, kind of like this smooth talking, like charmer. And I would sort of chat up my friends' parents, and I would always be that guy. One, because I was genuinely like that and I enjoyed those interactions. And from that, people would often say, like, oh, you're going to be great at sales. Oh, you should be a lawyer. And I just took that, with a grain of salt. And I just said, okay, cool. Noted. Thank you. I think growing up in my household, I always thought that I would ultimately probably end up teaching in some capacity. Right. I liked talking to groups. I liked informing people. I liked seeing people learn new things and being a part of that process with them. So that I think was probably at my default. I would just sort of default to, I'll be a teacher. But going back to your point about at that age, it wasn't like I was throwing myself headfirst into like anything and everything leadership. I was a swimmer. I started the first water polo team at Western High School. I did that for 4 years, played water polo for 4 years. I got into a lot of trouble and I got into a lot of mischief. So like for me, as I think about this now later in life, and I talk to my clients about not work-life balance, but work-life harmony.
That's exactly what I say.
It was very much present for me, even at a young age. I was like, yes, I want to explore leadership, but I'm not going to get so hyper-focused on that I neglect all these other areas of my life. I still want to be athletic. I still want to be part of a team. I still want to have friends. I still want to do, adolescent stupid stuff.
Yes.
I don't have to go to school every day. I can sneak out and go fish in the Everglades for half a day and then come back by fourth hour to get credit for the day. That was the stuff that we did.
It's amazing how kids are so good at manipulation and figuring out loopholes, right?
Yeah. And I think that for me was really important to maintain that harmony amongst all of those different areas of my life so that I wasn't just like, good at this one thing and then I'm playing catch up later in my life to understand myself in this other capacity.
Or feel guilty about doing one thing versus the other. And so you brought up, and I immediately jumped in. I was like, that's exactly what I say. Work-life harmony. Because I think work-life balance has a bad connotation now for whatever reason. But I think a lot of people have just kind of taken it to something that it's not and made it a bad term. But when you do love what you do, then it is work-life harmony. Mm-hmm. And that's what I look like. Obviously I own my business. I'm involved in a lot of things, but I learned in my teenage years, the busier that I was, the less trouble I got into. And I tried to fill my time with things that I enjoyed and liked. Yep. And being, a high level basketball player, it was 12 months out of the year. But as soon as I was done with that, I made sure to get a job because I wanted to make some money and I wanted to do different things. I still had time for friends. I still, friends on the basketball team, friends outside the basketball team, still played video games. Still love video games this day. I play with my 2-year-old and 6-year-old. I love video games. Spend time with my brother, my family, and just trying to, obviously some time with academics as well. But I've just found out really, it's like when I have time, free time to do nothing, my mind wanders and I somehow make poor choices. Yeah. And then when I'm busy, it all seems to fall into place. But when I'm busy doing things that I enjoy, and of course, it doesn't mean every second of every day I love every little part,
Yeah.
but just not having that guilt, and especially now as a parent of young children. So how do you deal with that, with living your life by design and doing the things that may be considered work to others, but that you're so passionate about, that you love, helping others, transformational leadership, coaching, but then not feeling guilty when you maybe have to fly on a plane to go to a conference or whatever you do when you're not around your twin boys?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I have my own coach. And at various times I had two coaches at a time sometimes, but my primary coach, we talk about everything and anything under the sun and a lot. He has two boys as well. And, he lives in Hawaii, and we have great conversations, and have had great conversations about fatherhood and partnership and being a business owner and all of the things that, that we do in a day. And one of the things he said to me was, sometimes being there for your family means not being there with your family. And I appreciate that, because everything that I do, and I say everything because I aspire for it to be everything. It's not always perfect. It rarely is perfect, but everything that I do with my eyes wide open, and I do so with like a lot of intention. So if I'm choosing to go, I went to Miami last night for a wine and cheese event, and the boys were like, but we don't get to see you.
Right.
Why can't we? It's our first week of school and all this. And I gave them both a kiss, and I said, I'm going to an event tonight. When I get back, I'll give you a big hug and kiss in bed. And I'll be up in the morning. And I took them out to breakfast this morning, and I took advantage of the time I had this morning with them. And they understand that. And granted, they're 8 years old, so they want what they want, and and they're going to have their questions, and I want them to ask those questions, and I want them to feel comfortable in challenging, my decisions. But my decisions ultimately are my decisions; they're my choice, and they're done so very intentionally. And I don't have a single regret. I genuinely mean that. I have not a single regret in my life, because I don't operate that way. Everything that I've done is a choice, and it's led me to something, different. Doesn't mean better, but something new, something different.
Do you feel free from having that mindset?
I feel 100% free.
Yeah.
I really do. It gives me a lot of peace. It allows me to put my head on the pillow at night, and in a way where I can sleep knowing that I did everything that I could today. And, you're a parent too. It's not always perfect.
Right.
We have our challenging days. My boys are super high energy, and my wife works full time, and we're a busy family. We have aging parents and a brother who's getting married in October, and lots of life changes happening outside of even just our immediate family. So to navigate all of that and expect that you're going to do it perfect every time is just a lot of pressure to put on yourself. And for me, I just show up however I can show up in the day, and that gives me peace.
So how do you advise your clients to balance or harmonize the desire to be perfect, right? Because you're dealing with high functioning, successful, mostly attorneys and other professionals, but balance it for the chaos of professional life, family life in 2025, in today's day and age. I'll give you an example. My wife's a prosecutor in Palm Beach. Smart, high functioning. She's a total badass. Here I am, Rossen law firm. We got 25 employees. We're trying to take over the world. And I also teach at American Heritage. I teach, part of the pre-law curriculum, criminal law and criminal procedure. My wife is also at American Heritage as one of the mock trial coaches. So she goes on about 5 trips a year. We have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. But yet we're also accustomed to, if I work really hard, if I study, if I do it right and put in all my effort, it's an A every single time, right? It's a simple formula. But then knowing that now life and parenthood and all the things we want to do is never perfect. It's never even going to be at an A level. And we've been realizing that's okay. Right. But how do you advise your clients on that? Yeah.
Well, I like the it's okay piece. I'll just say, because even our mantra, my wife and I have a mantra that it's okay, we're okay. And in the moments where there's lots of yelling happening and the kids are dysregulated and things are going off the rails, and, it's been a busy week and things have fallen through the cracks, it's okay, we're okay. And it just sort of centers us to like, look, we're happy, we're healthy, we're loved, we have so much to be grateful for. It's okay, we're okay. The other piece that I really encourage my clients to do is to take a self audit, and to do that regularly, because I think that we get so busy collecting the A's that you described because we're good at it, because we know that, A plus B equals C, that we just keep in that sort of pattern.
And that's been our source of validation since we were children.
100%. And even myself, going back to the earlier part of this conversation, I started collecting degrees. I got a master's degree from Indiana University. I got an MBA from Northeastern. I was just like going to just keep collecting degrees. I was thinking, well, maybe I'll do an MBA JD. Well, maybe I'll just do the MBA, then I'll do the JD. I was like, what am I doing? Right. And I needed to stop at one point and just sort of sort of reflect on what my values were, and what I was ultimately trying to achieve, and what the vision was for me. Not the goal, not the objective, not the result, but the vision for my life. I mean, when I walked away from my job at Harvard Law School, I had no job. I had 4-month-old twin boys that had been in the NICU for 5 and 6 weeks. And we left, Cambridge and Boston to come down to South Florida because we had a vision for what our future was going to look like. And people thought I was bonkers. They're like, how are you leaving this great job at Harvard that you've worked so hard for the last 8 years? You could steadily climb the ranks, and you have been. Why would you walk away from this? I said, I have a vision. And then me walking away doesn't disrupt that. It just puts me on a path to get closer to that vision.
And that must be hard. Well, for some people, that must be difficult because of, I think, the fear of failure and disappointment of others and what others think of you, right? Because we're conditioned since we're children to please, and we get a lot of our validation, whether if it's from our parents, friends, family, teachers, whatever, from pleasing others or what society thinks of us. So kind of give us some background on that at Harvard, where you guys were at, your boys, twin boys being born, and how did you craft that vision for your life and have the courage to stay away? Because, courage it's not making a decision in the absence of fear. It's making a decision despite the fear. Yeah. So how did you have that?
Yeah. And fear is the key word there. I mean, it really is, because I think that when I'm talking to clients, what we end up getting to after I say, do your self audits and what are your values and all of that, which are valuable and a necessary place to start. The question is, what's driving that fear? Right. So the fear exists. We all have it. We all encounter it. We need that validation. We need that success, quote unquote success to accomplish what, to appease what within us. The fear's driving something. And when we get clear on that, then we sort of understand what's actually motivating us. And is that still present for us? I mean, what motivated me in my 20s doesn't motivate me in the same way in my 40s. And if I'm not checking in on that, I realized that I have a fear that was driving me in my 20s. It's still driving me in my 40s, and it doesn't apply anymore. Right. So going back to the twin journey, which I won't go into like the details too much of, but we found out we were having twins, and then we soon after found out that we had twin to twin transfusion syndrome, which is where, just to simplify it, one twin is getting too much and the other is not getting enough in terms of nutrients from the mother. And, the sort of ignorant, if you're not familiar with it, the response is, well, at least you'll have one. And that's actually not true, because one's getting too much and can't handle it, and one's not getting enough and won't survive. And it was a very traumatic pregnancy. We went down to Baltimore on inauguration weekend in 2017 and had an emergency procedure, and we came back up and we had to go to ultrasounds and doctor's appointments every Thursday. And, we were worried that this wasn't going to happen. And when it did, and they came early, we were in the NICU for, as I mentioned, 5 and 6 weeks for each of the boys. And during that time, self-leadership for me was like front and center. It was an absolute priority so that I could be that for myself, because I was still working full time. Right. And so I could be that for my partner, who obviously was worried about what was happening in her body and what would happen to our future kids.
Oh, and the emotions are no joke.
Unbelievable.
Right, yeah.
And it's amazing too, because my wife will talk about it and she's like, oh my God, I love being pregnant. And I'm like, were you part of the same pregnancy as me? Because that was a really, really emotionally draining time. Right. And it was like daily self audits. Like, where are you today, Hakim? How are you feeling today? What's important to you today? And taking stock of that every single day so I could show up with that clarity and that confidence to be what my partner needed or what my team at work needed, whatever it was. So when we were going through all of that, we started talking about this vision and painting that picture together as husband and wife as
Right.
partners.
What do we want?
Right. What do we want? Where do we want to be? What do we want our children's lives to look like? What do we want our days to be filled with? And it was getting closer to family. And she's from Maine and I'm from South Florida. And I, of course, a loving husband said, honey, where would you like to go? And she said, well, let's explore South Florida. And I was like, okay. I absolutely love my in-laws and love Maine. And I was excited to get back to South Florida and have a little bit of the childhood for my boys that I got to have, which was, playing outside every day, all day, every year, the pool out back, they have a good life. And we started making some really tough choices to work towards that.
Wow. Yeah. This episode of the Success in South Florida podcast is brought to you by the Rossen Law Firm. We're more than just incredible lawyers. We genuinely care about helping good people when bad things happen. We have over 1,000 5-star reviews and a proven track record of fighting for people in our community. If you need trusted legal help in South Florida, start by calling the Rossen Law Firm today, 754-206-6200. No, I think that's incredible. And, there's so many people that allow what others think of them and the fear of shame, guilt, disappointment, failure, whatever you want to call it, right? They're all different things, but just drive them. And then I think that's where they wake up one day and go, did I live my life, an authentic, true life to myself? And that can be very difficult for people.
Yeah.
And so, are those things that you see commonly in the people that you coach?
I do. And I think I see that commonly in everybody today, myself included. I mean, it's not like, as I tell my clients all the time, this is a mountain with no top. It's not like you get to the top and then you're done. I have put a lot of work into this and I continue to put a lot of work into it. And it's a daily practice because new things come up for me. School just started this past Monday and the boys are already facing challenges and worries and concerns. And I have to manage that. And I'm thinking, okay, this is the first week of school. I'm going to go to dive back into my business. Well, not in the way that I expected to. And they were in after school care last year and they're not this year. So now I've got to manage my day. So all of a sudden what I thought was going to be, a replica of last year is already different. So it requires that I assess that. And I think that the things that you described that people are worried about or that they're factoring into how they make decisions about their life, it requires time and, more importantly, space to be very honest about why do those things exist for you? Now, where does that shame, where does that guilt, where does that worry, where does that fear, where does that need for validation, where does that must be doing something all the time come from? And what is it that you're trying to satisfy by having those exist for you? And I think that when you can have that conversation openly and honestly, then you start to realize that actually a lot of these things can drop away and you don't have to carry those things around and you can make decisions based on, as I say, inside out thinking versus outside in thinking. And the outside in thinking is what you described. All the things outside of ourselves, people's, judgments or assumptions or expectations of us, the world, politics, finances, whatever it might be, affecting how we then shape ourselves inside and decide from there versus coming in from this place and then creating our outside world from that.
Right. And I think a lot of it too is what you were saying is when your wife and you were, well, what do we want? What do we want our life to be like? Where do we want to be? What kind of parents do we want? And it's not about what do I need?
Right.
It's about what do I want? Yeah. And a lot of people, I think, have fear or shame and guilt about wanting things.
I agree.
Because they're just, I only need this. Well, but why?
Right.
You're limiting yourself for why? What reason? Now, we could talk all day about, well, is it parents? Is it society? Is it school? Is it it's probably a combination of all these things from our childhood and teenage years. But I think being a little selfish, and I say not being selfish to the detriment of others, but being selfish to the what do I really want or what does my family want is a good thing. Because then when you are taking care of yourself and you're happy and you're living a true authentic life, then you can be the best version of yourself.
That's right.
So yeah. And I'm going through this and learning a lot about myself as I'm going 100%. Through this journey through some of the groups that I'm in, whether it's, EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, obviously there's cool stuff that we're doing in Provisors, all these different things. And There was, going back a little bit to one of the things that we talked about like traveling, traveling with your boys. And cause I travel quite a bit too. And I heard, I have a friend, Jen Gore. She's a personal injury attorney in Atlanta. She has her own coaching group. She's doing some amazing things on social media and everything.
Cool.
And I heard her on a podcast with David Nagel. I don't know if you're familiar with David Nagel.
No.
Okay. And she was talking specifically about mom guilt. It's hard to be a big time, trial lawyer or law firm owner at all. And then on top of that, to be a female, right? Even harder. And when she's traveling all across the country, whether it's 1 or 2 weeks out of every month or more, and she has 4 kids, she really talked about reframing her mental focus of wanting to set this as a good example for her children. And so maybe 6 or 9 months ago, I heard her on this podcast and she said, it's not, I got to go travel and I miss you so much. And I'm so disappointed. Cause then what she's teaching her children is that mommy's work is not fun, is terrible, is bad. It's, and this is a negative. And she's talking about, I get to travel to California and here in these cool places and I get to be on stage and meet these people. And this is so fun and it gives me energy. And maybe when you're a little older, you can come with me and experience this. So when I really heard that, I was like, yeah, like that's work-life harmony.
Yeah.
That's setting a great example for your children that, mom or dad can be this badass, business person, lawyer, whatever, and enjoy it and not make it sound like it's so terrible. And then the kids, they can possibly use that as an inspiration for what they want to create their lives into and blend the two. So when I heard that from her, it was so impactful for me.
Yeah. I think the key that you said several times in that was get to. And I remind my clients all the time, just did it today on a coaching call I had this morning at 9 a.m. I said, the number of times he kept saying, I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And it was all in a positive way. Like, wow, I really need to do more of this. I really need to do more of that. And like, yes, I agree with that. And you don't need to do any of this. You don't have to do any of this. You get to. This is all a choice.
Yeah.
And when you can model that everything that I'm doing is a choice. Look, even when I raise my voice at my kids, I'm doing it consciously. If I'm off the rails, that's a completely different experience.
Doing it for a specific impact that you want to have.
I'm protecting them because they're running out into the street or they're about to touch the stove because it's still hot and they didn't know. I mean, something it's intentional, and that intentionality is so important. And what you're describing, with the mom guilt is present for all of us. It's being really intentional about how you frame it, and it's communicating. Because when the conversation doesn't occur, and this is sort of in the context of inner critic, but when the conversation doesn't occur, and this can be for kids, this can be for employees, this can be for partners, whatever it might be, when the conversation does not occur, that's where your inner critic fills in the gaps.
Right.
And the stories are created. And for young kids or for employees or for partners, that's where you start to build like what you imagine your truths to be. And that's where we start getting ourselves in trouble a little bit, because those stories are just that. They're stories. But when you get to the facts, what's the actual fact? What's really going on here? Because the conversation's been had, you get to provide that as a leader of a family or as a team or of a business. And I think that communication is so extremely valuable.
Right. And one of the things that my wife and I agree on wholeheartedly is we do not sweep things under the rug. She grew up in a family like that. So did I. We do not sweep things under the rug. We solve everything. And we do it through communication, no matter how long it takes, no matter when it is.
Good for you guys.
Yeah. We do not sweep things under the rug. All right. So now look, we met through Provisors. I want to talk a little bit about that, but talk to me just about how did your coaching company get started? When did it get started? How did it get started?
Yeah.
And, from a business standpoint, how'd you get clients?
Yeah. So, I was just telling the story last night at the wine event because they were asking a similar question. I was working at University of Miami at the time. I was the director of professional development, professional programming, and the director of intellectual life, also the executive liaison to joint degrees in professional programming. And for me, as much as I loved my colleagues and I loved the work that I was doing, I don't have a background in law. I've worked in the legal profession for 20 years, but I don't have a law degree. I don't aspire at this point in my life to become a lawyer or work in the legal profession. I understand them as professionals and as people, but I was eager to do more of the work that I love doing with leaders in any industry. And I couldn't do that if I was working only in the legal profession. The other piece that I found was, as valuable as these one-to-many programs and courses and workshops were, and they are valuable, I'm not taking anything away from them. Where I saw the most transformation occur was when I was actually sitting with someone one-on-one, just like this. And they would say, hey, that concept that we talked about as a group earlier, can I talk to you about how that pertains to my particular situation or my challenges or my team or my industry? And that's where the wheels started really turning. And that's where the shoulders would drop. And that's where they'd start to be a little more open, a little bit more vulnerable. And I love those conversations. So in 2019, still working at University of Miami, I decided, you know what, in my off hours, and I was very concerned about like the ethical optics of that. I really wanted to do it before work and after work. I just started putting out feelers and seeing if, people wanted to meet and have conversations about career and leadership.
So did you have this big formal business plan, or no, just starting off as a side hustle? Let me test, let me see.
Yep. Just a side hustle. It was more of like proof of concept. Is there something there that, do I enjoy it? One. And the aha moment for me was, I think I had like a really brutal day at work one day and just was like bags under my eyes and just bloodshot and exhausted. And I walked out and my wife was there with the kids. And I said, I got a coaching call with this client. I think I was charging like $100 a session back then just for fun. And I said, I've got a coaching call with a client and I'm really not in the mood for this right now. I'm gassed. And I walked in there and within 5 minutes of that conversation, I was flying.
I knew where this was going to go.
Flying. And I walked out and I couldn't calm myself down for like the next 90 minutes. My wife was like, okay. Like, wow, you are fired up. And for me, it was just so energizing. I was so inspired. I had like waves of chills the entire time. I still get waves of chills when I'm talking about these things. I'm meeting with clients. And for me, I was like, wow, after a long work day of triaging emails and navigating politics and, managing bureaucracy and trying to put programs in place, I had one 60-minute conversation that lit me up and will sustain me probably for days. And I was like, I want more of that in my life.
And so sounds like it was kind of that immediate, oh, wait a minute, I got something here. Time to make a change. So what did you do in that process?
So it was the end of 2019. So I went out to LinkedIn Lives and I went out to chamber events and I was shaking hands and telling people about what I did.
Still in your off hours?
Or off hours in the evening. And, and it was even so much so I remember being interviewed by someone who was doing like a social media video of a networking event. And they said, so who are you and what do you do? And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I should say it because I still work at UM right now. I mean, everyone had side hustles. It was just an optics piece that I didn't want to be taken out of context. And I remember one day just deciding like, my name's Hakim Lakhdar. I'm a coach. And that was like, oh, that felt good.
To verbalize it and say it.
It felt really good. And I actually had a colleague with me there from UM and she was like, wow, you really did it. And I was like, yeah, because this is ultimately the direction I'm going. It could be next week. It could be next year. I don't know when, but it's the direction I'm going. And I've been a coach my whole life. So to verbalize it felt so good. And then the pandemic hit.
Right.
And we were a single income family at the time. My wife was home with the boys and I wanted to take care of that paycheck desperately. I really wanted to focus on that. So I put this side hustle even more off to the side and said, let me focus on my job at UM and maintaining that and adding value. And things blew up in really interesting ways where we were doing online programming and I was responsible for a lot of that. So I was leading that charge and was very busy and active during that time. And I also saw that out of a very challenging situation for so many people that all we needed to do was send a Zoom link. And my international outside of Florida network that I had thought was kind of inaccessible to me because I had been gone for so long, now was a Zoom link away.
Everything changed.
And I sent Zoom links to everybody. I mean, I used to manage the board when I was at Harvard, all my old colleagues, and left and right, I was getting clients. And I looked at my wife and I said, there's something here. And so in, 2022, when sort of the dust really settled and everything was returning to normal, I had a conversation with the dean at the time at UM and I said, I think we're done here.
Wow. That's incredible the way that kind of just, came through. And, it's just, it's so smart that the timing was right. Everything kind of fits in.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, I think it was a smart decision to have the stability during COVID, because that can also be pretty terrifying. Now, maybe in your 20s, you single in your 20s, a little different, right? But at this time, you got the boys, you got your wife. Tons of fear. And one of the things that I think got me through COVID and our firm at Rossen Law Firm, in 2021, we tripled our firm. We went, the revenue tripled. We went from 6 to 13 employees. And then in 22, we went from 13 to 20.
Wow.
And a lot of it was because the decisions that we made during COVID, but I'm in these lawyer marketing, business, mastermind, coaching, consulting groups. And I had been in some of the higher tier versions, but they all, I thought, showed extreme leadership during that time period and said, we normally do once a month. Let's get on Zoom once a week. Let's get on Zoom twice a week. We got to get through this together. And I had that to lean on. And whereas I saw some of my friends in the industry say, hey, no court, I'm going to buy an RV and go around the country. And part of me is jealous. But we had grown from 3 to 6 people right before COVID. And I said, nobody's losing their job. We're all good. We're just going to work and we're going to market and we're going to figure things out and we're going to fail and we're going to succeed. But we're going to hustle. And we did. And, obviously we reaped the benefits from it, but I had that group to kind of go back on, to that coaching group. And that was really instrumental for me. And so I feel like a lot of coaches, it just, now people are even more hyper aware of the coaching industry. Yeah. I mean, it's been growing, yes, for 10, 15 years, but so much more now. And again, you're a Zoom link away. You don't need to go to meet at a Starbucks or to go to your office. It's just boom, there you go. I have a personal coach who's in Arizona and we meet every 2 weeks and it's easy, piece of cake. Right. And he's different than the other groups. And I mean, sometimes I'm a little overcoached, but sure. Right. But I, that's obviously the next level of figuring out, what we actually need and not. Yeah. But yeah, it's amazing. So, okay. So you finally break free, have the courage to start that. And then how do you get into just kind of professional networking? And cause we met through Provisors, which is a professional networking group that's been around 15, 20 years. Now it's been in South Florida for about 3 years. You're, which group are you in? And I know you have your own affinity group.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm in Miami 1. Okay. And the group leader of that is Jeff Bast.
Yes, I'm going to be on Jeff's podcast.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it's a great little studio he has in his firm too. Yep. This is beautiful. And I'm also the GLA of Miami 1. And then I'm also the group leader of an unofficial affinity group for now. It's coaches and consultants, and it's an affinity group based out of South Florida.
We got to get that official. How many members do you need to get it official?
So I think consistently we want to hover around 30, 35 every month at the meeting. And we're just shy of that.
Okay.
So
good. So we're
in a good place.
It'll be official soon. We'll get you.
Soon enough.
We might know some people. Yeah. And figure that out. But okay. So talk to us about your decision, to be involved in some real professional networking. Yeah. To what was kind of the idea behind that and how has that worked for you?
Well, I think recognizing that asking for help is not a weakness, or it's not a reflection on your inability to figure things out. I knew that a lot of people had done this before me and that there were lots of people with great insight and experience that they could share with me. So I actually joined a coaching group for coaches out of the UK. And I did that. It was a 3-month program. Got a lot of value out of that. Just had me thinking about things differently that I hadn't thought about. Look, I had been a W-2 employee for 25 years professionally. I mean, not to mention bagging groceries at Publix and a lifeguard at CB Smith Park and that kind of stuff. But professionally, I've been a W-2 employee. Right. I knew what my paycheck was going to be to the penny every time I got it. And now all of a sudden it was eat what you kill. And I needed to figure out what that meant for me and how I was going to show up differently and how I was going to have conversations about money and how I was going to think about money and relate to it myself. And
it was probably, what was it? I would assume that, and for me, when I left the state attorney's office to start my firm, which was 17 years ago, I was 26 years old. It wasn't so much the technical skills. I'm like, I'm good at this. Do I know how to do every little thing? No, but I'm good at being a lawyer. Yeah. It was everything else that was worrisome and gave me the anxiety and stress. So is that what it was like for you, kind of transitioning to business owner, entrepreneur?
Yeah, I had spent so much time, my whole career, doing professional development, leadership, management, coaching, and training in some capacity, that I was pretty familiar with all that. So
That came easy.
how to deliver that, where the value was, my unique style, that was all available to me. What was new to me was, how am I going to structure my days? How am I going to run a business? Am I going to treat myself like a bad boss or like an employee? Am I going to, undervalue myself? Like, how do I even price my services? I mean, $100 for a coaching session when I first started, when I was making six figures in my full-time job, was like, a takeout order on Friday night. That was just like fun money. But when this was like, this is what's paying the mortgage, and this is what's paying the electric bill, and this is what is sustaining our life and beyond, we need to get really serious about what the value exchange is here and understand that. So I read every book you could imagine about money mindset. I read every book you could imagine about sales and marketing. I really wanted to understand that stuff. Am I perfect at those things? I'm by no means a guru when it comes to those things, but I understand them in a way where now I can do that in an authentic way, and in a way that's aligned with who I am and what I'm most comfortable with. And I also get help where and when I can. So I work with consultants and social media folks that help in and jump in. But I think the piece, you're right. The piece for me was the technical side of this. I know how to do the, how to run this as a business, how to market myself, without a big name institution behind me or a title behind me, was new and exciting. And I was like, all right, let's see what this opens up for me.
Cool. And so now here we are 3 years in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what are some top lessons learned, successes, and mistakes as far as starting the company?
Yeah. So I think I'll start with mistakes. When you're starting out anything, there's an expectation that you have to take everything. You have to do everything. And there's two areas of this. Do everything in the business, which, you don't have to do it alone. You can find ways you can delegate, you can offload some responsibilities. So I've done that more and more as I've grown. The other piece was, I need every and any client that will come through the door, because I'm in the building stage. It doesn't matter. I'll take everyone. I'll take anyone. And I had many instances where I was like, wouldn't have done that if I had actually thought about doing that.
Was there a little fear in there too of, hey, I might not have enough to pay the rent or mortgage
100%,
this month?
100%. Yeah. And I think that that's present always. I think there's always that feeling of like, is this going to dry up? Is this okay? Where's my pipeline? Is it thinning out? The summer's quieter, so you get those. We spent a month in Maine, and I was still meeting with clients, and I got a couple new clients, but I wasn't sure where they were coming from. And sure enough, referrals were passed, and there were some great opportunities that emerged, but that's always present. My ability to handle that 3 years in is way different than it was in year one. And the sort of unshakable belief that I'm capable of this and that this business is continuing to grow and will flourish is what keeps me getting up in the morning and what keeps me keeps me from spiraling.
So I think there's two parts to that for me that I deal with as we grow the firm and are doing all the stuff that we want to do. One is that the belief, right, is just the trust and belief in that I'm doing all the right things for the vision and for the path. But the second thing that I've realized is there is a lot of data, so on one hand is it kind of like the art, of it. Mm-hmm. But then I have realized that there is the science behind it, because we have become more predictable with our marketing, our leads, our sales. We're at the point right now where we get a big media case and we might have that desire to go, okay, well, I really want this case. It's going to be great. And, but look, if it's not going to work because that maybe it's just not a great alignment with the client, or if just financially it's not there for what, our value is and what we need to run the business, having that trust and belief and the predictability that, well, because we've built the firm the way we are, and we do have a full-on marketing machine, that next week or next month, there will be another major case that we're in play, or there will be 3 more new major cases. And that really has helped me and the team make those strategic decisions. So little bit of art, a little bit of science.
It's a great point. Yeah, it's a great point. And I think that's one thing that I worked with a business coach earlier last year on, was creating some KPIs for myself so I could track the conversations. Because as you know, master networkers, we love conversations. We're open to conversations, but time is money. And when my clients are demanding my time and they've paid for my time, I can't forego that so that I can have a 30-minute connection call with someone who may just be kicking tires, or, may just want to catch up because, we're in the same group together. I'm always open to a conversation. I love connecting with professionals, but I'm also tracking that so that I can see out of this, what were we able to create? Was I able to help this person? Was I able to support this person? Is this someone that I can send referrals to constantly? Is this someone who ultimately could become a client? And getting a sense of like the ratio of those throughout the week or the month or the year gives me a better sense of where my energy and time, because as you know, and we've talked about this before, especially given what I do, you start to trade your hours for dollars. And you have to be very conscious of where you're spending your time and who you're spending your time with. So I think tracking that, the data piece, has become much more important.
Yeah. Yeah. So Hakim, there's absolute tons of nuggets. I would love to talk for another 2 hours on this, and I know we can, but we're kind of running out of time here. So ultimately, everything that we've talked about, how would you wrap this up in just a few key pieces of advice for anybody listening to this? Whether it's somebody who's a lawyer right now, wants to go to law school, whether it's somebody who has nothing to do with law and they just want to be the best version of themselves. What are just a few key principles that you live by and some advice that you'd have for them?
Yeah, I think that, I mentioned it earlier as a starting point, but for people to take this part of what I do for my new clients regularly quite seriously for themselves, whether they work with a coach or not, what are your values? Really, what are your values? And not what you value, but like your core personal values. So mine are compassion, awareness, and joy. So everything and everyone that I work with ought to touch on one, if not all three of those core personal values. And if they don't, it's probably not someone I want to work with. It's probably not something I want to do. There's got to be some aspect of that. And when people are clear on that, and they don't have to go through the exercise, but when they're clear on that, then they can start. It's just like company values,
right?
Then you can start to see, am I holding myself true to those values, or am I compromising on those every day? Because I'll tell you, the compromising on those every day, you might be able to sustain that for a little bit, but it's not sustainable long term. And it becomes exhausting. It becomes really confronting. And I think when I think about success, as we started the conversation, anybody looking to achieve that success, define what that success looks like for you. Take the time, create the space to reflect on, in a day, how much of my day is spent doing things that I'm really good at, things that I love, things that I want to do more of tomorrow? Or am I sitting here just like shuffling through the day, grumbling about how I don't love this and I don't love that? Because energetically, that's showing up. It's showing up in your clients. It's showing up with the way you lead. It's showing up in your family. It's showing up in your health. You name it. And I think that people creating that time and space for themselves to do that self-audit that I mentioned earlier, to reflect and say, okay, this worked for me 10 years ago. I'm still doing that same thing because it worked 10 years ago. Does it still work for me now based on where I am in this season of my life or my career? And being very honest about that. And when you can be open and honest about that, then you start to see how many areas of your life you actually have choices to make, because it's all choice. And then you can start making some adjustments if and where needed.
I couldn't have said it better. And what I've learned is, whether it's personal core values, business core values, I view it as a framework to consistently make good decisions. Right. We have choices every day. We make decisions every single day, whether it's some new exciting thing or whether it's a potential bad issue that's coming up. And it's just, what are my core values, right? What are the business's core values? What are my personal family core values? And the decision magically appears.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I'm still guilty of seeing the decision, knowing it, but then maybe not having the courage to make that decision, right? Of course, but then at least you can look at that and analyze that after the fact and say, no, the decision was here. Why? I knew it. Why did I not?
Right.
Right. And then when you know it and you follow it, and then it's the right decision, it gives you even more clarity and more reassurance that those core values are so important, and, further just kind of reinforces it. So these are things that I've been learning. EOS has helped me tremendously with that, the entrepreneur operating system that our firm runs on. But okay, so Hakim, what's the best way for anybody listening to this, the best way for them to get in touch with you?
You can email me, Hakim@lakhdarcoaching.com. And that's Hakim, Hakim, Lakhdar, Lakhdar. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I try to sift through all of the spam that comes through the inbox on LinkedIn to respond to every message personally. And you can call me too. I mean, I have my numbers on the website. You can lakhdarcoaching.com. You can look me up. I'm happy to connect. I love conversations. Conversations are free, and I look forward to helping anybody in whatever capacity I can.
Fantastic. We'll link all that stuff up so anybody can get in touch with you. And once LinkedIn fixes some of the spam, it'll be so much better. But LinkedIn's had an amazing renaissance the past few years, and I've been very active on that as well. So, Hakim, thank you so much. This has been so just tons of nuggets. I mean, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah,
I know our
likewise.
people will as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll see you on the next episode of Success in South Florida podcast.